My name is Tom. I'm 51 years old, and I've been a firefighter for 20 years. Nothing glamorous, but that's how it goes. Long shifts, early mornings, and more late nights than I can count. I live in a small town outside of Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's the kind of place where everybody knows your name, and when something unusual happens, you hear about it before the day is out. I got into firefighting because my dad was a firefighter too. He used to tell me stories about the calls he went on when he was young, and I guess I wanted to be a part of that world, the one where you can make a difference, even if only for a few moments. Over the years, I've seen my share of fires, car accidents, and the occasional strange call. You get used to the adrenaline, the smell of smoke, and the chaos. Routine helps you survive. My days are usually the same. Wake up at 5:30 a.m., coffee first, then a quick jog to loosen up the joints. Breakfast is usually eggs and toast, and I make a point to check in with my partner for the day. On long shifts, there's a rhythm to everything. Checking equipment, cleaning gear, inspecting hoses, making sure the trucks are fueled and ready. It's mundane, but it's necessary. The quiet moments, though, can be almost worse than the emergencies. That's when your mind starts to wander, and memories or fears slip in. It was a Wednesday night when it happened. I was on the night shift, which always feels a little longer than it should, partly because the roads are emptier, and partly because the town has this eerie calm at night. I'd just finished dinner at the station, a cold, leftover meatloaf that someone had forgotten in the fridge, and was sitting at the table with my partner, Jake, sipping coffee and scrolling through the news on my phone. "Tom," Jake said, not looking up from his phone, "you ever get the feeling the town's different at night?" I laughed. "What, like the vampires and werewolves thing again?" He smirked. "Something like that." The joke didn't land. Not really. There was something in his tone, an edge that made me feel a flicker of unease. I shook it off. Night shifts breed weird conversations. About an hour later, the radio crackled to life with a call that sounded routine at first, a house fire on the outskirts of town, near the edge of the woods by the old railroad tracks. I grabbed my coat, checked my gear, and hopped in the truck. The roads were empty, the fog thickening as we drove past the familiar stretch of Route 307. Streetlights flickered intermittently, throwing long shadows across the pavement. I could see Jake's reflection in the side mirror, focused, calm, but I caught a tension in his jaw I hadn't seen all night. When we arrived, the house looked small from the road, a two-story structure with peeling white paint and overgrown weeds in the yard. Smoke wasn't rising like I expected, just a thin, gray wisp curling into the night sky. The windows were dark, and the front door hung slightly ajar. Something about the house felt off. We stepped out of the truck, boots crunching on the frost-covered grass. The air was sharp and cold, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke, but it was hard to tell if it was from the house or just the wind playing tricks. I grabbed my flashlight and moved toward the door, noticing that the porch was covered in a thin layer of frost, despite the fire department's scanner reporting active flames. "Hello?" I called out. No answer, just the rustle of dead leaves in the breeze. Jake stayed close, keeping an eye on the surrounding woods. "Tom, you feel that?" he whispered. I frowned. "Feel what?" He didn't answer, just shook his head and followed me inside. The hallway was dark, smelling faintly of smoke and something else, like old blood. The floorboards creaked under our weight, and I felt the unmistakable hair on the back of your neck sensation. The living room was empty, the furniture covered in dust sheets, as if someone had tried to preserve it. Nothing appeared damaged, no fire, no smoke stains. I checked the walls, the ceiling, everything normal, yet the radio had said there was a fire. Then I saw it. On the far wall, a single framed photo leaned against the baseboard, like someone had dropped it. I knelt to examine it. It was a family portrait, a couple with 2 kids smiling at the camera. But the faces, they were scratched out, deep, jagged lines across every face. My stomach tightened. Who the hell would... When I started, my words caught in my throat. Jake was staring at the hallway behind me. "Tom, we're not alone." I turned slowly. The hallway was empty, or at least it appeared so. The shadows cast by our flashlights stretched unnaturally long, twisting along the walls. And then I heard it, a soft, almost inaudible creak, like someone walking on the stairs upstairs. "Probably the wind," I said, more to convince myself than him, but my voice sounded hollow. We moved cautiously toward the staircase, flashlights sweeping over the railings. That's when I noticed the marks, long scratches gouged into the wood, deep and deliberate, heading upward. They didn't look recent, yet there was something fresh about the scent in the air, iron and smoke mixed together. Maybe the fire was upstairs. Maybe the call was wrong. Maybe... He stopped, mid-sentence. Something shifted at the top of the stairs, a shadow detaching itself from the darkness. It was human-shaped. I froze. It didn't move like a person. The way it stood, completely still, unnerving. And the thing that really made my blood run cold, it was looking directly at me. From the darkness, those eyes, they glowed faintly, yellow in the beam of my flashlight. I grabbed Jake's arm. Back. We backed toward the door, but the air seemed thicker, heavier. The temperature dropped sharply, our breaths fogging in the flashlight beam. Something wasn't right here. Not physically. The house seemed alive, and it was aware of us. Before we could make it to the door, the radio crackled again. "This is dispatch. Are you on scene? Over." I grabbed the mic, my hands shaking. "Yes, we're on scene, but..." And then, as if the radio itself was responding to the house, the transmission warped. Static, whispers, a voice mimicking mine. "Tom, come upstairs." I dropped the mic. Jake grabbed my shoulder. "We're getting out now." We bolted toward the front door, but the hallway seemed to stretch farther than it should. Each step felt slower, like walking through water. My boots scuffed against the floorboards, but the sound echoed strangely, almost exaggerated, bouncing off walls that shouldn't have been that far away. "Tom, what the hell is happening?" Jake hissed, tugging at my arm. "I don't know, just keep moving," I snapped back, my own voice shaking more than I wanted to admit. We reached the door, yanked it open, and stepped onto the porch. But something was wrong. The truck, the station, even the familiar stretch of Route 307 we had driven along earlier, none of it was there. Instead, fog pressed in thick and gray, blotting out the road and streetlights. The woods behind the house loomed unnaturally close, black and silent. The air was cold enough to sting my lungs, and it smelled faintly metallic again, like rusted iron and something else I couldn't name. I blinked. For a second, I swore I saw movement in the fog, figures standing just at the edge, watching, but when I turned my flashlight, they vanished. "Jake," I swallowed hard, "do you see that?" He nodded, eyes wide. "Yeah, we need to get back in the truck, get out of here." We ran. I don't even remember how fast, just that our feet pounded the frozen ground, adrenaline pushing us forward. But the fog seemed to move with us, thickening, curling, closing off the way we'd come. Every turn I thought would lead to the road led us deeper into the woods. Then came the whispers, soft at first, like wind in the trees, then sharper, words forming in a language I didn't recognize. It felt as if the fog itself was speaking to us, coaxing us, mocking us. My heart raced, chest tight. I wanted to scream, but my voice wouldn't come. We stumbled into a clearing. At the center stood a small, crumbling structure. A shed, I thought at first, but it was older. Made of dark wood, blackened with age. The door was ajar, and inside I could see the faint outline of something large, covered in a tarp or cloth. Something about it called to me, pulled at me with a terrible familiarity. Jake grabbed my arm again. Don't go near it, Tom." But I couldn't move. Not away, not toward it. My feet were rooted in place, and I felt a terrible sinking certainty that the object inside the shed was why the house had pulled us into this fog. The wind, or whatever it was, shifted. The whispers became a voice I knew, deep, chilling, almost human. "Tom." I froze. The voice was my father's, my dad who had died 10 years ago. I stumbled backward. No, that's not possible. The tarp shifted slightly, as if something beneath it was moving, alive. Then it fell. What lay beneath was a mannequin, or maybe it had been a person once, but the face was my father's, not the way he looked in life, but twisted, elongated, the eyes too wide, glassy, reflecting the flashlight like black pools. His mouth moved silently, lips shaping words that the fog carried straight into my ears. "Tom, you shouldn't have come here." Jake pulled me back. "Tom, we're leaving, now." I obeyed, but my mind was racing. This wasn't real, couldn't be, but the smell, the air, the fog, the whispers, they were all too tangible. My years as a firefighter, my experience with emergencies taught me to keep calm, to assess, but none of it applied here. This wasn't fire, it wasn't smoke, it was something else entirely. We turned to run and the world shifted. The clearing seemed to twist around us, trees bending, the fog thickening into a wall. I felt my foot catch on something solid. A branch? A root? When I looked down, it was a piece of the house, a chunk of wall with peeling white paint, impossibly out of place, right in the middle of the woods. "What the hell?" Jake whispered. Then we saw them, the figures from the fog, human-shaped, but wrong. They didn't walk, they didn't run, they floated just above the ground, gliding silently towards us. Faces obscured, features blurred, but their eyes, if you could call them eyes, were hollow, empty voids that seemed to absorb the light from our flashlights. I grabbed Jake's hand. "We have to get back to the house. Maybe if we get back, we can, I don't know, reverse this or something." We ran, retracing our steps, or trying to. Every turn seemed to twist the forest into a new, impossible layout. The house wasn't where it should have been. Sometimes we'd glimpse it through the fog, only for it to vanish when we ran towards it. Exhaustion and panic set in. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I couldn't stop. I couldn't let the fog, or whatever it was, consume us. And then, through the thick haze, I heard it, the unmistakable crackle of the fire truck's engine. "Jake!" I shouted. We stumbled forward. The fog thinned slightly, and there it was, the truck, headlights dimly glowing. Relief washed over me, a raw, desperate hope. But as we got closer, I realized the truck wasn't quite right. The doors were off, the windows shattered, and etched into the metal were words in the same twisted script I'd seen scratched into the staircase back in the house. "Come upstairs." Jake grabbed me. "We're not going near it." But before I could protest, a shape emerged from the fog behind us. Tall, skeletal, its face a grotesque mimicry of my own. I froze. My heart slammed against my ribs, panic and disbelief twisting together. The air grew colder, heavier, pressing down like water. And then, just like that, it vanished. For a moment, silence. I looked at Jake. We need to go. We ran blindly until the fog finally thinned, until the familiar outline of Route 307 appeared in the distance. The streetlights flickered weakly, but they were real, solid. I collapsed into the truck seat as Jake drove us back to the station. We didn't speak until we pulled in. The normal hum of the city at night, surrounding us like a protective blanket. The station smelled like coffee and disinfectant. Normal, safe. But even as I leaned against the counter, trying to catch my breath, a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. Jake was quiet too, wiping down gear with methodical care, as if the routine could scrub away what we'd just experienced. I couldn't shake the images, the fog, the figures, the house that wasn't where it should have been, and my father's face, that voice echoing in my head. I'd been a firefighter for 20 years, seen things that would haunt most people for a lifetime, but this was something else, something that didn't make sense. We stayed at the station for the rest of the shift, the normal calls coming in like nothing had happened. But every time the radio crackled, every time a shadow flickered across the fluorescent lights, I jumped. Jake noticed, of course, but he didn't say much. Neither of us wanted to admit that something had followed us back from that house. After the shift, I drove home. The roads calm, the town quiet, as usual. I unlocked my apartment and flicked on the lights, half expecting to see that same fog spilling in. Nothing. Just the familiar smells of home, old carpet, coffee, and my cat circling my ankles. I tried to sleep that night, but it was impossible. Every creak in the building sounded like footsteps. Every wind gust against the window felt like whispers. And then I saw it, or thought I did, a shadow in the corner of the room. I flicked on the light. Empty. Over the next few days, I went about my routine, trying to convince myself that it was a hallucination, exhaustion, stress. But subtle things kept reminding me. Objects slightly out of place, shadows that lingered too long, the feeling of being watched, always watched. I called the dispatch center to double-check the report on the house. The line was busy for a while, then finally the dispatcher picked up. "Dispatch," a calm voice said. Hey, this is Tom, Firefighter, Station 7. I just wanted to confirm something about a call last Wednesday night. House fire near the railroad tracks, outskirts of town." There was a long pause on the line. "We don't have any record of that call," the dispatcher said finally. "No fire, no report, nothing." "Are you sure it was last Wednesday?" I felt my stomach drop. "Yes, we responded. Myself and my partner. It was real." "Tom, are you okay?" the dispatcher asked. I didn't answer, because if they had no record of the call, then what had we been to? What had followed us back from that house? I didn't sleep well that night. I kept waking to the sound of creaking floorboards, to whispers just below the threshold of hearing. My apartment felt wrong, familiar but distorted, like I'd stepped into a memory that wasn't mine. A week later, I drove past the edge of town near the old railroad tracks. I wanted to see it for myself, to prove to myself that the house was real. I parked on the side of the road, looking through the trees. At first, nothing. But then, through the early morning fog, I saw the outline. The house, small and decrepit, peeling paint, overgrown yard. It shouldn't have been there. Not according to the maps, not according to any record. I stepped closer, and a chill ran down my spine. The front door was slightly ajar, and then I heard it. The whispering again, soft, almost coaxing. My name, Tom. Come inside. I stumbled back to the car, heart racing, hands clammy. The truck's engine roared to life, and I drove away, fast, glancing in the rearview mirror. But even then, I could swear I saw figures in the fog at the edge of the property, watching me, waiting. Over the next month, the unease didn't leave me. Every call, every late-night check of the equipment, every creak in the station's floorboards reminded me of that night. I began seeing shadows at the edges of my vision, fleeting figures in my peripheral, shapes that weren't quite human. Sometimes I'd catch them reflected in the station windows at night, only for them to vanish when I turned. One night, I was alone at the station, doing inventory, when the radio crackled. Static at first, then my own voice, distorted, coming from the speakers. "Tom, come upstairs." I froze, sweat breaking on my forehead. I wanted to run, to smash the radio, to deny everything. But instinct overrode fear. I grabbed my gear and bolted to the door. The hallways stretched unnaturally as I moved. The exit seemed further than before, like the building had warped, lengthened to trap me inside. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Not mine, not Jake's, something other. I didn't dare look. My lungs burned. My legs screamed, but I ran anyway. The station doors loomed ahead. I flung them open and stepped into the cool night air. Relief flooded me. The world outside was normal. Quiet streets, faint street lights, the distant hum of traffic. I never returned to that part of town at night again. I avoided the edge of the railroad tracks. I avoided thinking about that house. But the whispers never fully left. Even now, I'll wake in the middle of the night and think I hear faint creaks in the hallway or a whisper of my name in the dark. I told Jake what I saw, what I felt. He didn't argue. He didn't need to. We both knew, even if we couldn't explain it, that we had experienced something not normal. Something that didn't obey the rules of our world. And yet, despite the fear, despite the lingering dread, life went on. Calls came in, fires were fought, people were rescued. My years as a firefighter taught me to deal with emergencies, with chaos, with death. But this was different. This wasn't something you could respond to, extinguish, or contain. Every time I pass the edge of town, I feel it. An almost imperceptible tug, like the world is thinner there, like the boundary between what's real and what isn't wavers. I've thought about going back to confront it, to understand it, but a small voice in the back of my mind keeps me away, because some doors, once opened, aren't meant to be closed. And some houses, well, they're better left alone. It was 6 months after that night when the call came in that changed everything again. I was nearing the end of my shift, tired, ready to go home, when the radio crackled with a new report. A house fire, again near the railroad tracks on the outskirts of town. My stomach sank, a cold, familiar dread twisting in my gut. Jake noticed my reaction. "You okay, Tom?" I forced a nod. Yeah, just routine, I guess." But we both knew it wasn't routine. I could feel it, like the air had shifted, heavier somehow, the static in the radio humming in my bones. When we arrived, the house looked exactly like the one from that night. Same peeling white paint, overgrown yard, broken windows. Smoke curled lazily into the sky, not like a fire raging, just curling, deliberate. My hands gripped the doorframe of the truck, knuckles white. We stepped out cautiously. The air smelled faintly metallic again, the cold sharp against our skin. I glanced at Jake, his expression taut, mirroring my own tension. The front door creaked open. I didn't want to go inside, but some part of me, the part that had been a firefighter for 20 years, knew I had to. Lives could be at stake. Maybe someone was trapped. Inside, the house was silent. Dust covered every surface, thick and undisturbed. The living room was empty, the furniture draped in sheets. And in the center, the photograph, family portrait, leaned against the wall, faces scratched out, just like before. I swallowed hard, a lump in my throat. "It's the same," I whispered. Jake's voice was barely audible. "We should leave, now." But then the whispering started again, soft, distant, winding through the empty rooms. My name, calling me upstairs. I froze at the base of the stairs. My mind screamed at me to turn and run, but I knew I wouldn't be able to leave without facing it. I climbed slowly, every step echoing, the wooden boards groaning under my weight. At the top, the hallway stretched unnaturally long, like the house itself had changed shape, elongated, trapping me. And there, at the far end, I saw it, my father, or rather, something wearing his face, the twisted mimicry, elongated features, hollow eyes, lips moving in silent words that the fog outside carried directly into my ears. "Tom, come closer. It's waiting." I staggered back. The walls seemed to ripple, the shadows thickening, encroaching. My vision blurred, time warped. Minutes stretched like hours, and seconds slipped past too fast. I realized then that the house didn't obey the rules of the world, not ours at least. Jake grabbed my arm, steadying me. "We're leaving, now." But I turned to run, but my legs didn't obey. The figure moved closer on its own, gliding, silent, its distorted smile widening. And then, impossibly, the hallway behind me stretched even further, twisting, bending, as if the house itself was alive and reshaping to trap me. I forced my muscles to work. I lunged past Jake, out of the hallway and down the stairs. The air at the bottom felt slightly more solid, the pull of the house weaker, but the whispers still lingered, wrapping around my mind, clawing at my thoughts. Outside, the fog was thinner, almost gone, but still present, brushing against our skin. The truck was where it should have been this time, doors intact, engine running. We jumped in, not daring to speak, tires crunching over frost-covered ground as we tore down the road back to the station. By the time we arrived, the town looked normal. The streetlights hummed, the roads clear, the fog gone. But the lingering unease remained. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that hallway, that figure, that twisted version of my father. I couldn't shake the feeling that the house wasn't gone, that somewhere out there, it existed, waiting. I tried to rationalize it. Exhaustion, stress, overactive imagination, but the scratches on the staircase, the distorted voice on the radio, the impossibility of the fog, those weren't imagination. Something had followed us back, and even if we survived, I knew it had marked me. Weeks went by. The edges of my reality felt thinner. Sometimes I'd glance in the mirror at home and think I saw a flicker of a shadow behind me that wasn't mine. A whisper in the apartment, a creak in the floor, the smell of cold iron in the air. Jake noticed it too. We never spoke about it, but we both knew whatever was in that house, it hadn't left us. I've been back to firefighting, back to routine, but with a new wariness. Fires, accidents, chaos, I can handle those. But the house, the fog, the figures, that's beyond any emergency protocol. That's something alive, something patient, something that waits. Sometimes on quiet nights, I think I hear it calling my name, and I wonder if I returned, would I find a different world? Or worse, would the world itself shift again, dragging me into that house, into that impossible hallway, into that room where reality bends and waits? I don't know, and that's the terrifying part. All I know is this: after 20 years of firefighting, I can handle flames, smoke, and chaos. But there are things that aren't meant to be confronted, and some calls, no matter how routine they seem, you never forget. I've survived this one, but the house is still out there, watching, waiting, and I know, deep down, it will call again.